On today's show, after 2 years of tanking, the Nets will attempt to make a playoff push next season. How aggressive will they be in that pursuit? And will Michael Porter Jr. be a part of that? I'll dive into that and more on today's episode of Locked On Nets.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Nets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the #1 sports podcast network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. The show is 100% free on all those great platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And on today's episode, it's Fan Take Friday. I took questions and takes from Nets fans on a wide range of subjects, and the mailbag was overflowing this week. So this is actually going to be a two-parter. Today's episode will be focused on the trade deadline and the Nets' plan for next season. And part 2, which will be out this weekend, probably Saturday night into Sunday morning, will focus entirely on the Nets rookies. But I got Lucas Kaplan coming on to dive into all these questions. Let's go. All right, back on the show now. We got Lucas Kaplan of Nets Daily. And Lucas coming in for a mailbag episode. It is Fan Take Friday here on Locked On Nets. And we have a packed mailbag this week. A lot of trade deadline questions, some stuff about the Nets rookies, also some stuff about how they're going to approach the coming seasons. So let's get right into these questions. First one, Nets need to lose out majority of the games this season. We are 2 games back from top 3 odds in the lottery. I think we should try to trade MPJ for 2 first-round picks from the Warriors. That's from Ethan Gans. And then on a similar note, with Jonathan Kuminga now eligible to be traded, do you expect a ramp-up in negotiations for MPJ, or do you think Marks holds on until closer to the deadline? What are the odds he gets moved? That's from Blaine Rose. So the Michael Porter Jr. stuff has been a huge topic of conversation. I did an episode with Lucas earlier this week. I did one with Brett Siegel yesterday, and there's been some conflicting reporting. There's been some reporting that the Nets had some conversations with the Golden State Warriors. Now Shams came out today with this being the first day that Jonathan Kuminga is eligible to be traded. Said the Nets haven't talked with the Warriors in over a month. I'm not sure I'm buying that, but he said that a lot of reports have been today downplaying the Warriors' interest in Michael Porter Jr. But I would say that we are, it's January 15th. Like, there's still 3 weeks until the trade deadline. Things don't tend to really get serious until, that week before the trade deadline, maybe like 2 weeks before the trade deadline. So right now, if you are super interested in the guy, there's no reason to broadcast it and just, say you're, give out the message that you're desperate to get somebody. So maybe the Warriors are in on John. Maybe the Warriors are in on Michael Porter Jr. Maybe they're not. The Bucks are another team that could be in. But I do think that the Nets are going to explore trading Michael Porter Jr. I think, is he going to get moved? That is obviously going to be a big topic of conversation leading up to the deadline. I do think that the Warriors do have some level of interest, even if they're saying obviously right now that they aren't interested. Lucas, what has been your read on the situation?
Yeah, I think I don't really view the Kuminga trade eligibility as changing much in talks, right? It seems like the Warriors are trying to pawn Kuminga off as a positive asset, maybe as a substitute for some draft capital. And the Nets are probably only interested in him for that expiring money. And so when the teams have such different valuations of the main salary that would make this trade work, you can understand why there are these reports coming out about how, the talks might be fizzling out. The sides are far apart. Do the Warriors even really want to make the trade? And that's kind of my read on it, is that it seems like they would just really need to get a third team involved in terms of a team that would view Kuminga as a player they would want, right? And not just expiring salary and, okay, you still have to give us 2 firsts, if that's what we're asking for. Not like a first, a fake first, and Kuminga. That's not where the Nets are in negotiations.
Yeah, it seems like the Nets want 2 first-round picks, which is understandable. And if I'm the Warriors and the Nets are asking for my 2026 and 2028 first-round picks, I'd consider it, but I don't know if I'm going to do that. And that's probably why, a lot of people are asking, have been asking me or hearing all of these different conversations about like a 3-team trade between the Kings and like the Nets maybe taking back like Malik Monk or a DeMar DeRozan. A lot of people have asked me, like, why would the Nets even do that? Like, why wouldn't they rather have Kuminga's expiring? And yeah, like I think they would rather have Kuminga's expiring, but they also want probably multiple first-round picks. And the Warriors in that scenario are trying to probably see if they can get some value for Kuminga and reroute that value to the Nets as opposed to giving up, say, 2 of their own first-round picks. And that seems like it's going to be an impediment because, Kuminga, like, for example, the Sacramento Kings were offering, I think, a lottery-protected first-round pick for Kuminga in the summer in a sign-and-trade, and now they're not offering that. So are the Warriors going to be able to get value like that and maybe reroute it in a deal for Michael Porter Jr.? Do they even, like Michael Porter Jr. that much? I think obviously they'd have some level of interest. That's all to be determined. But on that note, next question, what's the most appealing asset you've heard mentioned in trade talks for the Nets and Michael Porter Jr.? An unprotected future Bucks pick. That's from Taylor Seaton. And I'd say that like the most interesting assets that I've seen, not that like I've heard them, offered to the Nets or anything like that, but just speculative, would be like future Warriors unprotected first round picks, or those 2031 or 2032 Bucks picks that could be unprotected. Like, and I think that's why you look at like the Warriors, if they're only offering their 2026 first round pick, like I'm not sure how much that moves the needle for the Nets. I think that they'll be looking for more distant, unprotected picks that have more upside. And that's going to be the holdup. Do the Warriors want to offer something like that? Do the Bucks want to offer something like that? They might, but I don't think that we're going to know until we get like, a week away from the deadline or so.
Especially with this team being the youngest team in the NBA by average age, they're not necessarily super eager to keep accumulating picks, especially ones that like may be in the 10s or 20s. I should say they're not so eager to keep accumulating young players, keep drafting 19, 20, 21-year-olds. Rather, the Nets view this as the way to upgrade the roster this summer. Salary like Terrence Mann or who knows? I don't want to speculate too much, but like Nick, guys that make real money, some distant picks, and that gets you like players that are ready to come in and contribute. With the fact that they don't own their pick next year, right? I think they really want further out picks like Erik is talking about, right? So they can, down the line be used as trade chips. To answer the question, if you can get like that Bucks pick, right? Or if you can get, 2028 Warriors pick, stuff like that, because it's really hard to like project teams' long-term futures. But with Steph Curry being 37, 38 years old, right? You have like a fairly rigid timeline for like when you expect him to not be able to lead a team to the playoffs. And hell, he's doing it right now, and maybe the Warriors should be trying to go all in around him, but that's another conversation.
Yeah, I just think that, with what the Nets are looking for, like it seems like they have a stance on Michael Porter Jr., like kind of a hard line of what they're going to want in a return. And I, talked about this on the episode with you and also the episode with Brett. Is like, what I've heard is that they're more than comfortable keeping him through the deadline. Like it's been kind of a similar messaging to what the Nets have, what they were saying with Cam Johnson of like, we're comfortable keeping this guy if we don't get the offer that we like. And I believe that, and we'll see, like, are these teams, as like right now there's a lot of posturing going on from both sides. Then you get closer to that deadlines, create action, and we're going to see like who comes off of that stance and who doesn't. But on the note of if the Nets do hold on to Michael Porter Jr., next question, if MPJ doesn't get traded and keeps similar numbers through this season and next season, would you consider him a max player, and would you try to build a team around him? That's from Kimball Prime. Lucas, I think you have some opinions on this. You go first, and then I'll give my opinion.
Yeah, my opinion is like after I watch a game or two, I think like, is this guy like the second best shooter of all time? Like I seriously think that like a lot when I'm watching him. We've talked about it. He's like 40% from three on 14 3-pointers per 100. It's just ridiculous. However, he's not a max player. He's not a max player even if, he does this for the next season and a half, even if the back is okay. However, I don't think that means that you can't build around him. As, I've said on the show, like I've kind of softened on the idea of keeping him, of, building a competitive team with him on the roster. Does that mean if he asks for a max extension that you have to give it to him? I certainly don't think so. But I do think it means that, like, I would feel comfortable paying him a good amount of money and having him on the roster. And I don't think these numbers are, like, going to be impossible for him to keep up. But, like, no, he's not a max player. Yes, there could be a future with him on this team for a while.
Yeah, and if I'm the Nets, like, I think maybe say they keep him through the trade deadline, maybe there can be something where it can kind of be mutually beneficial for that, where, like, he is this kind of not injury prone, but has, like, an extensive injury history. He doesn't necessarily fit the timeline the best, but maybe he can be that bridge player. So, you know, with all of that stuff, you know, entering the equation, maybe you can work out an extension where it's like a bloated 2-year deal or like a 2+1 where he kind of gets paid and he can try to be like this kind of bridge guy for you, but you don't have to commit like $40+ million annually to him for 4 seasons. And if the back of that contract starts to look really bad and maybe you have some injury concerns, like, you have kind of an out of there. You're not locked into it necessarily long term if it doesn't age well. So my stance hasn't changed. My stance has been, if the Nets can get something that they deem to be a good offer for him and fair, if not good value, whether that's a distant unprotected first-round picks, whether that's multiple first-round picks that might be closer and they can get an expiring contract maybe alongside that, I think you have to consider trading him. If you can't get that and you hold him until the offseason, maybe you field offers for him in the offseason, or maybe you look to extend him. And I do not think that would be the worst case scenario if that ended up being how it plays out. Last question before a break. Why do the Nets insist on trying to build like a small market team when they are in New York City? Accumulating 50 draft picks and tanking for 10 years is the way to success if you are OKC, Utah, Charlotte. Why shouldn't Brooklyn cash in this offseason and next to go after a big fish? Ant plus MPJ would dominate the East. And that is from Michael Porter, Truther. I wouldn't say that the Nets are trying to build like a small market team. I kind of disagree with that premise. I mean, they've gone for it in a very big way in the not so distant past. And we remember that. And they've kind of got forced into a situation where it was blatantly obvious that pivoting to a rebuild and a tank was the best way to go. But we've all known that it was last season and this season. And then after that, they're taking that step back towards, trying to take that step back towards contention. And I think that very well could involve another trade for a big player. Like, we don't know who that's going to be yet, but the plan was clear. It was built through the draft for these 2 seasons, tank to try to get some top picks and really good young players, and then see what becomes available down the line. But I don't really have too much of an issue of the process. Might I have some quibbles with the execution and how they've done it over these last 2 years? Somewhat, but I think like they've kind of made the right decisions based on how it's played out in the fallout from the Big 3 era.
Yeah, Erik, why doesn't this team have a history of going all in for stars, either on the trade market or the free agent? Like, I just don't understand. Anyway, it's just like not true. And it's also they'd be in a better situation if they did operate, if they tanked earlier. They set a year on fire, acting like too much of a big market team because they thought they could tread water with Mikal and Cam, right? And the twins from Phoenix, waiting for that big fish. They set a year on fire. It was absolutely miserable. They won 34 games. They fired the head coach. Everyone was like, wow, I really wish you tanked earlier. They made a great trade to get out of it, but like, that was their plan in 2023. Like, trade for Donovan Mitchell, who ended up, not really wanting to come here. Trade for someone else around Mikal and Cam. So you could argue that was a little bit too much of this big market hubris. Luckily, the Knicks offered 5 first-round picks for Bridges. But 2 years of having your own pick with no real great young talent or old talent on the roster is not exactly putting on the small market hat and dooming yourself to tanking for 10 years. So I reject the premise of that question. But, Ant would be cool in Brooklyn. I'll admit that.
And with that, this is a 2-year tank. As I said, the Nets are going to try to be taking a step back towards contention next season. What could that look like? What could that process look like? Is Michael Porter Jr. going to be a part of it? We'll get into all that when we continue Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, the season's heating up, and DoorDash has a way to keep fans in their bag the whole way through. Whether you're watching the highlights, the tunnel fits, or just your favorite player, DoorDash makes the entire season more fun because every player has their bag. With DoorDash, fans have one too. DoorDash keeps your snacks stocked, your gear fresh, and your watch party vibes absolutely on point. There are nights when your team stresses you out. Let DoorDash become your post-game therapy. Sometimes you just need dessert now. Those late-night interviews hit, and suddenly you need chips at midnight. DoorDash is built exactly for that. If the group chat says pull up, DoorDash makes sure you're always prepared. Snacks, cups, and even a phone charger for the friend who's always at 2%. So from tip-off to overtime, stay in your bag and order on DoorDash. Get snacks, drinks, gear, whatever gets you through the season, delivered right to your door. DoorDash, in your bag all season long. All right, coming back from the break, continuing today's Locked On Nets episode on this Fan Take Friday. Got Lucas Kaplan here. Next question, getting right into it. How motivated are the Nets about winning next year since Houston has their pick? Do you expect big free agent spending, trading for a star, or stay the course with the 2025-26 draft picks as the focus? Also, any shot MPJ is shut down in March, April to preserve draft position? That is from Mike NYY. And this
yes.
is going to all right, Lucas.
Yes. Yeah. No. Just yes to the last part of it, but go on.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get into that. There's some more questions about that after. But focusing on what is the approach? How motivated are they going to be for next season? I mean, they're going to be motivated because obviously, they're not going to want to give Houston one of the top picks in the draft. My concern with that is, while I think we all admit that is going to be in their minds, it shouldn't really be. If you're operating the correct way, that pick should have no bearing on how you operate going forward. You shouldn't be trying to expedite the timeline next year and maybe trying to, do some things like get some short-term wins at the expense of the long-term just because you owe this pick swap to Houston. And that is my concern because we hear a lot of fans, we're getting a lot of questions about it here. You hear a lot of fans asking me questions about it on social media and stuff. How are they going to compete next year? They have to compete next year. They owe this pick swap to Houston. And it's no, they don't. They do owe the pick swap, but they don't have to compete. Obviously, you want to be better, but it's not like this pick swap is the end all be all. And we have to cash in for whatever we can get because we have to be good next season. That is flawed process, and I hope it's not the case. I'm not naive. I think they're going to try to be better, obviously, but don't put the pedal down all the way to the floor and put yourself in a bad position, which is something that they have done in the past.
Yeah, they also, not to get too far down the line, they do own their own pick in 2028. And who knows how good they're going to get right over the next year. And if you are talking about, again, it's tough to use examples before we've even gotten to free agency or the draft, but it's a sunk cost. You've made the swap. It's going to happen. If you want to be good, go for the plan, just try to stack wins. AKA, operate like a normal basketball team. All for it. The Hawks throwing money at Nickeil Alexander-Walker, right? That's a good move. The Hawks taking on a distressed asset perhaps, and Kristaps Porzingis, who doesn't have a ton of years left on his contract and really can't stay healthy, but when he is on the court, he has been pretty awesome for Atlanta. I don't think Atlanta's the pinnacle of success, but those are moves that to me, do a good job of balancing your short-term future, maybe making a spunky playoff run. A lot of people were high on Atlanta before the season. Hasn't worked out for them, but that type of thinking is probably a happy medium for them next year. And they're in the East, they're going to try to make the play in, they're going to try to make the playoffs, and then I think they're serious about that. I don't necessarily think they're serious about trading the farm for Giannis if it comes to that in the summer, but that's kind of my early read on their plans. But again, we won't really know a ton until the draft, July, August, all that stuff.
And on a similar note, if the Nets do trade MPJ and go full tank this season, what is their most likely path, both in terms of players they target in free agency or trade and in terms of internal player development towards being competitive next season? That is from Tyler the Torch. It's a tough question to answer. There's a lot of obviously things that we just can't forecast right now, but I would say that the most realistic and practical and how I hope they would go about it is similar to what Lucas just said. Like, obviously, you're going to want guys to take a leap. Like, you would need Noah Clowney to continue to develop. You would need Yegor and some of these second-year guys to develop. Hopefully, you spike a top pick and you get a guy who can be a positive contributor as a rookie. And then, like, maybe that star guy becomes available that you can target in a trade. But if not, and you don't feel like it's the right time to just push all the chips in, which it obviously wouldn't be at that point unless it was like a young star you could get somehow. Like, I think you make some shrewd moves and you try to buy around the margins and you try to find guys that maybe are buy low candidates. Maybe they're distressed assets who you see could have more value to you in a larger role than some of these other teams. Like, we saw Sean Marks do this the first time around, like when they had the 2018-19 season. He got a guy like D'Angelo Russell. He found other guys that could be contributors. He brought in a veteran like Damari Carroll, who was cast off and became a very positive contributor for this team. Like, that to me is the path. Like, internal growth and development. Hopefully you get a top pick. And then you can find guys that, like, maybe you can overpay for some young guys that are going to get priced out of their own teams. Like, we're going to talk to that. And then maybe you can find some guys who are buy low candidates, who are distressed assets, who can be contributors for you more so than where they were at with their other situations.
Yeah, I mean, the Wizards just got Trae Young. I know everyone's down on Trae Young. They just traded 0 first-round picks for him. I don't know what the Nets front office, I don't know what their pro scouts think of every guy in the league, but, like, let's say the Cavs flame out. Let's say Darius Garland has a bad first round. Maybe they really like Darius Garland inside, that war room, right? He's making 25% of the cap for the 2 seasons after this one, right? So that's not like this super long-term investment where his contract is just going to anchor you down for years to come, right? Like, if you loved Garland, if they did, that could be a guy where it's like, hey, the Cavs, disappointing playoff exit. Maybe he's only worth a first and it's not a premium first. Moves like that, right, could be the way to replace the talent void that MPJ would leave on the roster if you traded him. Now, the money might get hard, whatever. Garland's making 25% of the cap, but, like, moves like that, right? Or even, like, if they were, a year later, if they had a different front office, like a Trae Young type of move. That's the stuff that I could see them doing this summer, where maybe they're not like tier 1 names and stars, but they are, like, kind of like Erik said, I forget the term you used, buy low candidates, right? With some proven track record of high level production. I don't know if they, like, love Garland. Seems probably unlikely given the way they've drafted recently and what they've talked about, but a player like that, I'm sure you could name 5 or 6.
Yeah, a player with some pedigree, and, like, it doesn't necessarily even have to be a guy who, like, they're super high on long term as being a part of this team. Like Darius Garland, like you said, like we saw Trae Young, Darius Garland, who knows what John Morant will go for, whatever other guys you want to talk about. Like, these guys who are really talented, who, because of the situations that they're in, you can get them, like, pretty much for nothing. Like the Nets, I think kind of the term that we've been using is like the bridge guy. The Knicks had, like, Julius Randle, who became that bridge guy. Like, the Nets might need to find that guy who can kind of elevate them to a certain level before they can, kind of go after everything. You can say that, like, MPJ could be that guy, sure, but, like, the difference between MPJ and some of those other guys that we're talking about is MPJ might have real value right now where, like, you can't really pass up on getting that value just for the sake of these short-term wins. Now, he might not have that much value. And if he doesn't have that much value, he could be that bridge guy in addition to other guys that you could bring in. So we'll see. But similar note, next question. What free agents are top priority for the offseason to potentially bring in? Since we will be looking to be competitive, who should we target, especially if we end up trading MPJ? That's from Kid Chris. Really tough to forecast free agency at this point. But if you go and look at the free agent pool, which I did before this episode, it's pretty bleak. Like, guys just don't make it to free agency much anymore. Like, that's for stars changing teams via free agency. It's kind of a thing of the past, player empowerment era. Guys are taking their extensions. If they want out, they tell their teams to go scratch and they ask for a trade. So, like, the guys who I think that the Nets could go after in free agency, I think it's kind of a similar ilk to what we potentially heard about this season. They didn't end up doing it, but, like, it's the restricted free agents maybe that they can kind of throw, like, the poison pill contract at, or it's an unrestricted free agent who's getting priced out of, their current team that they're on, and that team can't afford to keep them. A few guys that I looked at as possibilities just early on, like no source reporting, just speculative based on the situations. Peyton Watson has been a big talk, obviously, with his recent breakout with the Nuggets. He's a restricted free agent. The Nuggets are obviously kind of strapped for cash. Who knows whether they're going to be able to keep him. Another restricted free agent, maybe they could be interested in Tari Eason, like the Rockets have a lot of money on their books. Maybe the Nets could overpay to get a guy like that. A couple of unrestricted free agents like Kobe White with the Bulls. Who knows if he's going to stay there. Quentin Grimes just signed the QO with the 76ers. Maybe he could be an option. Like, those are the types of guys like who could fit the timeline. They're younger, and like the teams that they're with right now might not be able to retain them. And the Nets are going to have that luxury where if the Nets have, especially if they traded MPJ for an expiring and they have like $60-70 million in cap space, you could just throw a ton of money at these guys and try to get them to come. So we'll see. But anything there interest you, early on, or any other names that you had in mind?
I don't know. I think it's too early, but like, it does feel like they're destined to like throw a bag at like Pele Larson, who's also a restricted free agent. For some reason, I see them being linked to him. Just feels like a Nets sort of thing with restricted free agents. But yeah, other than that, like we heard, right? Didn't we hear like all year last year that they were linked to every restricted free agent because they had a ton of cap space? And in the end, I don't think they had interest in really any of them, including their own. And so, like, maybe, I don't know. It's just super early. And I think you also have to see like how the roster shakes out, how they feel about the rookies after a year, what they do, if anything, about Nick and Dayron, who they think is a better fit there. So it's early, but I could see them playing again, like a little bit more of the restricted free agent market now that it's time to, again, probably try to make the playoffs next year.
All right, last question before a break. How do you feel about trading for Anthony Davis if his price is 1 first-round pick and only a bunch of contracts? That's from Tanny G. I've been asked about this by several people over the last few days since some of these reports have come out from Shams Charania and some guys. Like, we've talked about the buy low candidates. He's definitely a buy low candidate. I'm not interested in Anthony Davis just because he's 32 years old. He never plays, and he just doesn't fit the Nets timeline whatsoever. And he's making over $50 million, and he's going to want an extension after that. I just don't have any interest in him. Like Lucas, we could talk maybe like there's some other buy low guys who I'm much more interested in than Anthony Davis. But what's your opinion on that?
I mean, it's not gonna it's kind of a non-starter. They're not going to give up assets for him. And he's making 36% of the cap 2 years from now in a player option. It's just not.
When he's 34.
When he's 34. They're just not close enough. I still like AD, like still does a lot of, great things, but it's just not the situation for them to go.
Yeah. And if we're talking about like other buy low candidates, like I would not want like a Ja Morant at all, but I'd be more interested in a Ja Morant just because he's younger. Like the guy, people like have been asking me about Ja Morant and like, is that palatable for the Nets? I don't like him, in an on-court fit of what he's doing basketball-wise. There's also like videos and audio of him like telling his teammates that he doesn't F with them and like asking them to go fight. So he's a guy I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. Like if you could get him for nothing, maybe, but like he seems like just such a nightmare to deal with that I wouldn't want him.
I always love to bring up Zion, who I'll never quit. And
I was literally just about to say, like the buy low guy I'd be interested in would be Zion.
People around the Nets say like, no thanks, and I don't know. I mean, I get it. I understand why, but that's the guy that I'll always be down for. Like, yeah, throw a first. Yeah, why not? Like, that's my personal, but I don't have any of the intel or like behind the scenes, scouting that the Nets front office is surely doing and seems to be steering them away from Zion. But
yeah, I mean, all these guys who are buy low candidates, like if you talk about a Ja, if you talk about a Zion, they're buy low candidates for a reason. Like, and it's like for Ja and Zion, there's some on-court issues, but there's a lot of off-court issues, and the Nets are not a fan of off-court issues. But hey, like if you're going to take a swing on somebody, Zion, I think, would be a pretty good option of a guy to take a swing on, but there obviously are a lot of red flags there. Last thing we got after a quick break is we got some Cam Thomas questions. We got some questions about how the Nets are going to navigate their rebuild moving forward, how they're going to navigate the rest of the season. So we'll get into all that when we continue Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern, I become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new, boosts, bonuses, and surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing is perfect. Right before the games start and right before the weekend starts, it adds extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, coming back from the break, continuing today's Locked On Nets episode, this Fan Take Friday, rolling on through all of your remaining takes and questions. Next one, it is obvious Cam Thomas hinders the development of the Nets' young players. He and the Nets both know he won't be here in a few months. What is the point of continuing to play him minutes? The development loss is not worth the potential 1 second-round pick they'd get in a trade. That's from Will NBA Hater. I mean, I've been pretty clear on the Cam Thomas situation. I don't feel like there's a ton to gain from playing him right now, but I also don't think that they're just going to bench him. There's no trade, it seems like, to be had for him right now. So if there's no trade to be had, they're not just going to banish him and take him out of the rotation during a contract year. As much of you as people might not want to hear it, there is still, you still do need to keep up some appearances in the NBA. You don't want to completely do guys dirty. So I understand your viewpoint about him not being the best for the rookie development, but I think that they're kind of just riding this out until we get to the deadline, and maybe he can be a throw-in in a trade. But that is why they're playing him, I think, is the only reason I can think of is they just don't want to completely, do him dirty. But Lucas, what's your take on that?
I guess I don't really understand why they're protecting a relationship that's ended a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I guess I don't really see how, if you're a team looking at their roster for salary, whether Cam's sitting on the bench or whether he's scoring 16 points against the Pelicans, you're going to be okay. Oh, well, maybe we will trade for CT. So, I think it's just the path of least resistance, right? He's not, he is a better basketball player than the other guys, some of the other guys, right, on the Nets roster. And so it's a bad look no matter what if you just banish him. And so I just don't think there's any reason to excise him from the rotation other than the obvious ones of, well, there's no future here. Well, he's taking away minutes and touches from these players. It's sure, but if you think that'll end in 2 or 3 weeks, you might as well just play him and avoid a needless sort of controversy or just another annoyance.
Yeah, it just seems like it would be a headache. And another question of a similar tone, if a well-respected franchise like the Warriors can bench Kuminga while they wait for a trade, why would it be such a big deal for the Nets to do the same with Cam Thomas? That's from Ricky C. White. And Ricky, it's a very good point. It's a very good point. I just said, the only thing I can think of is, the trade value thing, I guess, I don't think they're getting anything for Cam Thomas, especially with the way they're using him right now. You saw, the game against the Grizzlies, the game against the Pelicans, they had a desperate need for shot creation and scoring down the stretch of those games, and they won't play him. So,
Erik, there is another reason that you can think of.
What is that?
The Warriors are trying to win, and the Nets are not.
So you think that it's a stealth tanking move?
I don't think that it's explicitly a stealth tanking move, but it makes the calculus a little easier, right? It's okay, well, we can play him. It's not like he's going to steal us too many wins right now anyway. Sure, there might be a night where, right, he goes off and shoots, 12 of 19, right, or 10 of 13, and he steals them enough points for a win. But, at this point, and you see him come off the bench, and, he's not playing in great units anyway that can mask for some of his deficiencies all the time. It's you might as well just play him. That's a pretty big difference too between the Warriors and the Nets right now, is all I'm saying. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but It's part of it.
No, I get it. I also would say that, like, if they took Cam out, I don't think those second units would just be like cooking without him.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know how much of a stealth like tank move it is. I mean, I will say, like, I looked it up, and the Nets this season with Cam in the lineup, I think they're 3-12, and without him, they're like 8-13 or something like that. So they've objectively been better without him. But, you know, going on that, like I said, you know, the only reason that I can think of that they're playing him is to avoid the controversy, as Lucas said, and to like keep up some appearances, I guess, like not, you know, just completely do a guy dirty during a contract season like that, especially when like there is an argument to be playing him in terms of like he is the most talented shot creator on the team. He just doesn't really do anything else well. So we'll see. Last question on the Cam Thomas front. What do you think about the idea of attaching small sweeteners to get off of CT? He has become such a team cancer, and I don't think it's a coincidence we started losing constantly as soon as he rejoined the lineup. I'm talking a protected second rounder or equivalent. That's from
a protected second rounder.
I'm not attaching anything to get off CT. I also think, like, look, I'm not a fan of Cam Thomas's game. The idea that he's become such a team cancer, that's a little overblown in my opinion. I don't think he's a team cancer. I think that on the court, he plays a certain way. It might not be the most conducive to like development and team success, but I haven't heard anything that like anybody in the locker room like doesn't like him. Like they're very friendly with him still. I'm sure they wish him the best after this, but yeah, they're not attaching anything to get off Cam Thomas. No way.
Danny Wolf isn't shooting like 45% at the rim because he just can't stand Cam Thomas in the locker room. Like it's, you don't need to, that's exacerbating it. That's just making it worse. Like all you have to do is ride it out for the rest of the year or the trade deadline, right? Or whatever. You don't have to make it worse for yourself by giving up assets. I also don't think any team's being like, okay, like, well, we would trade for Cam Thomas, but the number 57 overall pick. Okay, now we're definitely going to trade for Cam Thomas. So I listen, hey, I'm not like trying to poke too much fun. I get where you're coming from. I get the sentiment, but it just feels like you're making the issue bigger than it is if you were to give up an asset. And may I just say once again, you know, it's no coincidence, right? The question said it's no coincidence that the Nets are losing since he came back. I would offer that it's a good thing, right? So they should keep losing.
That does it for today's episode of Locked On Nets, part 1 of this Fan Take Friday. Part 2 will be dropping Saturday night on YouTube, Sunday morning on the audio platforms. Now will be an episode focused on all the questions surrounding the Nets rookies. But if you guys do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy the content, take a second, smash that like button, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. Anything you could do to engage is much appreciated. But the Nets got the Chicago Bulls on Friday and at Barclays Center, so I'll have coverage of all that and more when I'm back tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.